during the movie, I was like, Phil, how does Michael Myers eat? Like, how does he survive?
So we're back, Boys on Film, covering Halloween Ends, the latest and the final film in the trilogy of Halloween, which of course was resurrected by David Gordon Green. Raj is here. How are you, Raj?
Hey, Phil. I'm all right for being out at 2 a.m. on a Monday night, but we are here.
You were in the West End last night, Freedom Bar.
Yeah. Went there to see Kinky Cabaret with a friend, which was basically a bunch of West End folks singing show tunes very enthusiastically. Some were very good, actually. But it's not my usual Monday night sort of thing.
Are you hungover?
No, but I did need a few extra hours of sleep this morning.
So we went to see this at the multimedia screening the day before the film came out, and I mean, I was really excited. I know you were really excited because we saw Halloween Kills before that in the cinema, and we also saw Halloween back in 2018. And of course, you know, it's been delayed because of the pandemic, so it was meant to come out last year. For those who don't know, I mean, everybody knows the Halloween film, I guess, from 1978, but this is based on characters by John Carpenter, who directed the original film and did the score, and also the producer Deborah Hill. But yeah, it's been criticised unfairly, I think. It's made a lot of people angry. I know we had writer Stephen King defending the film, saying it was great and it had good character development. But a lot of people, a lot of the fans, you know, of the original and also of the sequels that came out after, they seem to be really, really pissed off about this film. I can't understand it. Do you get it?
Well, you know, I don't have super high expectations of horror movies. You know, I did like the first Halloween remake. I didn't mind Halloween Kills. I thought it was very different. You know, interesting storyline. So I, you know, again, didn't have no expectations going into the film. But for me, as a casual fan of the franchise, I felt like the ending was pretty satisfying. That's all I can say.
I did as well, and I'm like you. I didn't have very high expectations, which is weird for me to say that because I did with the first one that came out in 2018, and Halloween Kills I was really looking forward to as well. With this one, I should have been really pumped and really excited about it. I was looking forward to it, and being the fan that I am, I kind of, after seeing the first two in this trilogy, I didn't really think it was going to be a 5-star movie for me. So I was, you know, not expecting amazing things. Let's talk about the plot, because Halloween 2018 continued the story from 78. The babysitter murders. Of course, Laurie Strode, terrorised by Michael Myers, who killed his sister at a very young age, and then was locked up in a mental institution, escaped, and terrorised the babysitters, of course, Laurie Strode, the babysitter, and her friends as well, and killed a lot of her friends in the process. So Halloween 2018 came out and was like a continuation of the 78 movie, and it ignored all the sequels that followed, because there were loads of sequels. I mean, there's 13 films in total now, and that includes the Rob Zombie remakes as well. But Halloween Kills came out in 2021. That was the sequel to 2018. Laurie's in hospital, Haddonfield community kind of fighting back. It made $131 million. It cost $20 million to make. So this is a big franchise. You know, this is a popular series of films.
Yeah, and I think it probably does really well on demand and streaming afterwards. You know, it's that type of movie that, again, like you mentioned, low cost to make, makes a lot of money. So, yeah. You know, and somewhat enjoyable. The only criticism I have of Halloween Ends is there's a new antagonist, which you're introduced to in the very beginning scene, which kind of like sets the stage for what's to happen. But I kind of wish he would have had a little bit of character introduction or development maybe in Halloween Kills. I felt it was a little rushed. But other than that, I thought his whole storyline was very interesting. I really liked the turn that Laurie Strode took. You know, she's a completely different person in this film. So she's gone through a lot of changes and come to terms with a lot of her devastating past. But yeah, I just felt like the whole story was pretty captivating. I was like really enjoying it. And quite interestingly enough, I was watching the film and we were probably like half hour into it. And I was like, we haven't even seen Michael Myers yet.
That's the problem that a lot of people have got, because he's got quite a small, on-screen time.
You knew he was there. You knew something was going to happen. He's always kind of there in spirit. But, I mean, you could pick this movie apart, quite easily. There's just a lot of things that don't make sense. And I even turned to you during the movie. I was like, Phil, how does Michael Myers eat? Like, how does he survive?
But it's interesting you said about Corey Cunningham, who's the, obviously the main character in this story, because we've not seen him before, but it's set on Halloween night 2019, and that's how he comes into the picture, because he's babysitting a young boy called Jeremy who pulls a prank on him. And I kind of want to say more about that, because I don't think it's a plot spoiler necessarily, although it might be, because that opening scene is quite jaw-dropping, isn't it? It's quite a shocker. So perhaps if I do explain what happens, that would spoil it for people that hadn't seen Halloween Ends, but I'm guessing a lot of people watching this probably have seen it already by now anyway. I liked that, because it, like you say, Laurie, is seen a little bit differently here, because she's writing a memoir, so she's writing about her trauma and about the experiences she's had previously. And I liked it because it tapped into, much like 2018, it tapped into the trauma, it tapped into the kind of melancholy and the aftermath of all the, the killings and the problems that she had in her life, and obviously the relationship with her daughter and her granddaughter. And obviously in Halloween Kills we saw her daughter Karen was killed. So it's that as well on top of the problems with Michael Myers. So for me, it didn't bother me that Michael Myers wasn't in it that much, and that might seem a little odd for a lot of the hardcore fans, but Halloween never was really just about him for me. It was about the aftermath of torment and trauma and terror. Did you think Jamie Lee Curtis was good in this? Because I thought she was her strongest out of the three films in this film. I thought her performance was brilliant.
Yeah, well, how many times can you watch Laurie Strode be traumatized? And she is the polar opposite from how she usually portrays this character, and by design. So you just really felt that like she had come out the other end and owned her trauma, understood it, and did her best to decide not to live in that trauma. So there's a really interesting interview with Jamie Lee Curtis on The View, in which a recent one, you can look it up on YouTube, where she talks about what the three movies in the trilogy sort of mean. And it all sort of ties back to the strand of the current political climate, and especially in the US. And after kind of like looking at it through that lens, the three movies kind of make sense now. So if you're looking for a, grabby, stabby, knife through the throat film, you're going to get that. But, I think if you're one of those people that criticize the movie, maybe you should dig a little deeper.
Absolutely, I completely agree, because I think there are a lot of people that are complaining about this film particularly that just want the stabby stuff. And I think you're getting so much more. And that's why I loved this film particularly, because for me it had a lot for everybody, even though a lot of people are complaining, so obviously they feel shortchanged. But I think it had storyline developments. I think it explored other characters that I wasn't expecting, particularly with Corey. More of Laurie's recovery and how she's dealing with her trauma, and also some brutal kills as well. I think the violence in this was really unexpected, because I thought we'd had that with Kills, because obviously that explains it in the title, it says it all. It does what it says on the tin. But this really stepped it up a notch, I think, and one particular kill had a lot of humour in it. And also there wasn't much humour in the rest of the film, because it had a really gloomy feel for me, and I really like that melancholy, I like that tension, and I think it was filmed better than the other two films. I think it had more of a feel of John Carpenter films, particularly Christine, and if you've seen it you'll know exactly what I mean by that, with not necessarily a car but with a motorbike. And and a really tense final showdown. I thought it was really thrilling.
The ending is very satisfying.
Isn't it funny though, because I had a lot of comments on social media, a lot of people atting me, like saying I wasn't a true horror or Halloween fan because I liked this film. And there are those, who want Halloween movie just to be about Michael Myers, and it's not just about him. It's about people that suffer.
Take your opinions and shove them up your... You might have to edit
That's
that
what
out.
I told them. That's exactly what I told them. Let's talk about Carl Richards, because Carl Richards, she played Lindsay Wallace in the original 1978 film. She was the girl that Laurie was babysitting for. And she's got quite a small role in this. I was quite surprised by that because she did have more screen time in Kills. So I think that's quite a nice balance because I think each of the three films are different for whatever reason. I think Kills was a bit more cartoony. A lot of people didn't like it so much. I think it's the weakest of the three. But I think Carl Richards, she had a bigger role in that film, and she doesn't necessarily in this. And it's the same with Laurie as well, because Laurie's character was mainly in the hospital in Kills, so she didn't get a lot of screen time either, and people were pissed off about that. But when you think about the whole three films, I think there's something for everybody. It's like it's a mix-up.
Yeah, and Kills was always going to be that Empire Strikes Back middle movie, tying the two end pieces together. That's what you get. So,
exactly.
Only a true horror fan would just know what you just said, Phil, and be able to notice those small, minute details. So those people who say you're not a true horror fan, again, you can stuff it up your...
It's subjective. Everybody takes away something different. It doesn't mean that I don't like the original film and I'm not a horror fan, because I am. Fair enough, everybody's got their views and everybody's got their comments and everybody's entitled to those opinions, but I think it's unfair for them to say that I'm not a Halloween or horror fan, because I am, because I love those movies. But every film is different. What did you think of Will Patton? Because I love Will Patton. I mean, he was a real heartthrob in the 80s, wasn't he? He was a bit of a dreamboat. He plays Deputy Frank Hawkins, who, of course, was in 2018 and Halloween Kills as well. He's in this film too. It gives us a bit of a backstory about him and how he felt about Laurie too, which I really liked.
It was sweet. For a horror film, it was really sweet and sentimental.
And again, you've got that in there. It's not necessarily all about kills, it's about emotion, which is good. Jamie Lee Curtis thinks that Deputy Frank Hawkins is Karen's father, which was interesting. I saw her in a recent interview saying that, obviously there's some sexual tension in Halloween Kills because they end up in hospital together. And he says, I wish I'd made more of that kiss when we had that kiss years back. Again, I liked that, and that tapped into the emotion. And for me, I got quite... I said to you, I can't believe I'm crying, because I found it really emotional, Halloween Ends.
Aw, Phil, you big horror softy.
But I think that's partly because it was coming to a conclusion, and I kind of want it to continue, even though half of me thinks, that's it now, we're done. We've had a good ride. There's been a lot of great films, maybe some really dodgy ones as well. But
if only they could give Nightmare on Elm Street the proper reboot trilogy that it deserves.
Isn't that funny you mentioned that? Because I know Heather Langenkamp, who's in The Midnight Club at the moment, she was talking about that in an interview recently, saying, I'd love to come back as Nancy and, do what Laurie Strode is doing, or do what Jamie Lee Curtis is doing, 40 years later or 30 years later.
Yeah, they got to get that costume right for Freddy, though. The last reboot was just... that costume was terrible.
There are certain films I loved more than others. Obviously the original, but I really like Dream Warriors, the third one. That was one of my favourites.
Yeah, that's probably one of my favourites, and I like the reinvention that New Nightmare brought into the mix, like the twists of how you dreamt it into reality. Nancy playing herself sort of thing. So I think we need a New Nightmare trilogy.
I mean, that was a popular franchise commercially, so, who knows? I don't know whether Robert Englund would come back, though, because I think I heard a rumour that he wasn't keen on the idea of doing any more, but it's all about the money.
In the immortal words of Cyndi Lauper, money changes everything.
Sticking with the 80s vibe. See, that's another thing about Halloween Ends. It had for me, it had like a mid-80s to late 80s vibe about it. More rock than synth piano, like the score in the original 78 Halloween movie. It had more of a Lost Boys feel about it, and Christine as well, which I liked because it was different to the others. Yeah, I love the mood of Ends. It had a really poetic feel for me as well, and it went quite deep. It felt gloomy, but it felt reflective and quite hopeful as well. But it has divided people. There are some people that love it and some people that hate it. There doesn't seem to be any middle ground. It doesn't seem to be people that are saying it was okay. It's quite a Marmite movie.
So what did you think of the movie? I'm going to wrap this up because Phil will just go on all day about this movie.
I could talk about it for hours.
Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and tap here to subscribe now.
Thanks, Raj, for that, because I could have gone on for hours. We'll be here next week still talking about it. So yeah, for me, star rating, it's a 4. I liked it as much as 2018. In some ways, I liked it more. But obviously, you've got to see these films as a whole package. I don't think you can see them as an independent film.
I'll give it a 4 as well.
Yes! I think it deserves it because I think there's so much hate out there and I think it's unjust. But again, subjective, isn't it? Everyone's entitled to their opinion. Halloween Ends. Screening in UK cinemas right now. Go and see it. Go and support everybody who's made this the big thing that it is. And yeah, I think David Gordon Green, I think he's done a great job. Interesting to see that he's working on The Exorcist and he's releasing the reboot in a trilogy like he's done with Halloween. So I'd be interested to see what he does with that.
Trilogies are the new universes.
It's the new thing. Thank you everybody for watching. Thanks Raj, and I'll see you on the next video. We're talking LFF stuff still for the next few weeks, so make sure you subscribe and check out the playlist on the screen.